Hey everybody, it's Natalie from Power Moon Tarot. Thank you for joining me tonight. I haven't been able to live stream for a while. I'm excited to be here with you all. And I'm going to check the technology here, make sure that we are up and running. Okay. And okay, good. So we are up and running. And if you're here in the comments and you can hear me fine, you can definitely let me know and make sure that you are hearing me. But thank you so much for being here, everybody. And today is a subscriber request video, and they asked that I look at the astrology of Addison Rae, who is a famous TikToker. She's not so much on doing a lot of TikTok anymore. She's kind of transitioned into doing acting and singing and putting out music and everything. But we are going to look at the astrology of Addison Rae. And the title I have here is The Air Moves Around Her. And I have that there because she has a grand trine in air, and she has a lot of air in her chart in general. And so I thought that it was appropriate to put that as a secondary title, The Air Moves Around Her. Now, Addison Rae became popular in 2019 when she started to post videos on TikTok. And over time, she amassed a following of over 88 million followers on TikTok, and she was catapulted into fame. She was basically a small town Louisiana girl who grew up in a pretty modest family. Wasn't used to, didn't come from LA, wasn't a rich kid or anything like that. Very modest, humble beginnings. And she started posting on TikTok during her senior year of high school, and it just took off. And from there, this whole career has kind of unraveled for her, has been in the works for her. I wouldn't necessarily say unraveled, but has been in the works for her ever since she amassed that huge following on TikTok. And she was a part of that critical group of Gen Zers who hopped on the train, the fame train of TikTok at that really key moment in time. And it was like her and, 5 or 6 other creators that really blew up there and made a lot of money from that due to being like social media influencers and having brand deals and all of that. I had somebody ask me if I would be willing to do her chart because they had remembered that I'd done Doja Cat's chart on my channel, and I had talked about how at times maybe she was like picked on by her fans, but then also kind of picked on them back when I was talking about Doja Cat. And they mentioned that people could be very critical of Addison Rae and have a lot of hate towards her as well online. And this person had mentioned that it was kind of similar to Doja Cat and wondered if I could take a look at Addison Rae's chart. So that is why I'm going to do that. Some of the issues today that I'm going to talk about may be very, you may relate to them if you were born like from the mid 90s up until 2010, which is the Gen Z, Gen Z in popular culture, what's called Gen Z, then you may relate to some of the things that I'm talking about today with Addison Rae. I'm going to be talking also about the fixed star Aldebaran and how it shows up in her chart. And I'm also going to be talking about the price of fame and what she's had to go through and things like that in her life. So we will be taking a look at her chart today, and I posted a picture here of her from, I think it was her Vogue shoot, where she was wearing this dress that says "Don't judge a girl by her clothes." And Addison Rae has a Libra sun, okay, and she is a Gemini rising, and she has the moon in Aquarius. So her big three are all air. Basically, she's got quite a bit of air in her chart, very little earth. She has Mars and Virgo at the bottom of her chart here, but lots of air, very little earth. Okay, she's got some water, a little tiny bit of fire, but mainly air in her chart. She was born October 6th in the year 2000 in Lafayette, Louisiana. And she does have a grand air trine, as I mentioned in her chart. You can see Jupiter, Uranus, and the Sun are in a grand air trine to one another, which we'll be talking about that a lot in her chart today. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And I'm going to start out with taking a look at the type, and I don't usually, this is more of a modern astrology type of a thing that I'm doing here, talking about the how the chart display looks and the type of pattern in the chart. This is more of a modern astrology technique, but it's something that, and I'm a traditional astrologer, but I do like to pull some things from modern as well into what I'm doing. And I thought it was really interesting with Addison Rae because she has a locomotive type chart with Uranus as the high focus planet. Now, you may be saying to yourself, okay, what are you talking about, Natalie? So a locomotive type chart is when you have a lead planet and then you have a trine between two. So we've got the trine between Uranus and Gemini, between Jupiter and Gemini and Uranus and Aquarius. We have a trine relationship there, and there's 120 degree of space between that trine. So Addison Rae, now Saturn kind of interrupts the pattern here, but for all intents and purposes, this is pretty much a locomotive type chart, which, like I said, means that you have a lead planet that is sort of leading off your entire chart. And in this chart, because the midheaven right here and the part of fortune are not planets, the lead planet here is going to be this Uranus in Aquarius, okay? And, so Addison Rae is part of the Uranus and Aquarius generation. So everybody born between 1995 to 2003 has Uranus in Aquarius. So there's going to be a lot of Gen Zers that have a Uranus in Aquarius in their particular chart, but depending on what time you're born and where you're born, your Uranus could fall anywhere in the chart. But in this case, we have Uranus in Aquarius, and during the time when Addison Rae was born, there was widespread adoption of the World Wide Web during that time. Search engines became very popular. Early social media started to appear. Camera phones, technology, having an identity online started to kind of come up. And blogging and meeting people online started to increase during this time period. So she was born during this time, and pretty much many of the Gen Z were born during this time when technology was really starting to become something special and started to really change in the world. And when we say that we have a planet at the top of our chart, for instance, Uranus is the highest planet in her chart. You can see how I have Uranus circled there in purple on the chart. Uranus is the highest planet in her chart, and that planet that is at the top of the chart kind of oozes its energy all over the chart. So, what did Addison Rae become famous for? She became famous for going online on a new social media app, TikTok at the time, and, performing with her friends and doing skits and doing lip syncing and all of that with her friends online on a social media app. And so we can see how Uranus is there, and we're going to talk about the role of Uranus in her chart. But Uranus is oftentimes associated with technology, and Aquarius can also be associated with technology and progressiveness and friends and breaking trends and making trends. And so we see this explosion of the World Wide Web that happened at the time that the Gen Zers were getting born, and about how they're ushering in this new world of being online and having an online identity and meeting people online and being able to record yourself and put those videos online. Addison Rae was also part of something called Hype House, which was a mansion in LA that online creators went and lived at together and made content with their friends. And for those of you that are a little bit older and you remember the 80s, and you remember that there was like a brat pack in the 80s with like Emilio Estevez and a bunch of other people who they were all like coming of age actors who at the time acted in certain movies with each other, and they all hung out in Hollywood together, like Demi Moore, Emilio Estevez, all these people. There was a group of 5 or 6 of them. Well, Addison Rae was a part of 20 years, actually 40 years later, she was a part of what would become like the Gen Z Brat Pack. And her friends basically used technology to go on this app and make all these videos. And she became a part of this, what people were calling the Gen Z Brat Pack. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Also, Addison Rae moved around a lot when she was a kid. She moved from Texas to Louisiana, and then back again to Louisiana due to instability in her parents' relationship. Her parents were on and off again, getting married, getting divorced, getting remarried, on, off. And their jobs were fluctuating as well, but mainly because of their relationship. And if you look at the ruler of the 4th house of family, is this Mercury here in Scorpio, and it is in a conjunction with Venus, and Venus is squaring that Uranus. So, my family is moving around a lot because of my parents' relationship, or, with Uranus being the lead planet in that locomotive type chart, it says, Uranus is a planet of sudden changes and sometimes instability through sudden changes and having to go around. And she talked about how she would have to make friends wherever she went and get to know people socially over and over again because her family was constantly moving around and changing locations and, having to be social with a grand Air Trine that she has in her chart and continually like pick up and move or go and meet new friends all the time. That is very Uranus and Aquarius, but it's like, we'll get to know each other, we'll talk, and we'll make new friends along the way, which I feel like is very much a part of her chart. Now, she is also with Uranus in her 9th house of higher education. Addison Rae dropped out of college to pursue a career in entertainment based on the social media that she had started earlier. And I think that that's really interesting with the Uranus in her 9th house of kind of like rebelling against higher education and saying, I'm not going to continue to go to college anymore. I'm actually going to leave college and I'm going to go pursue my dreams. Neptune in the 9th house, right? I'm going to go pursue my dreams and go pursue music in a creative field in Los Angeles. And so that Uranus and Aquarius at the top of her chart, there is definitely something to look forward to, or not look forward to, but it's something to look out for. And I also think when, one question I have for Addison Rae, she's very young. She's only like 23 years old. She's, got quite a lot of life left for her there. But with that Venus squaring Uranus and all the instability that was in her parents' marriage, I wonder if she is going to delay marriage, if she will take her time in getting married or resist getting married because of that, or if she does get married, will she have divorces or instability as well? My feeling is that she may not get married for a while, and she may want to be independent and on her own, doing her own thing, and not, jumping up and marrying someone because of this instability that she saw in her parents' relationship. And so I have a question about that. I think that that is going to be interesting as she moves forward in her life, how that Venus Uranus square is going to play out for her. Now, it's interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, Saturn kind of breaks the pattern in the locomotive type chart that she has. It's like the one outlier. All her other planets are in between the Jupiter-Uranus trine. And so all these other planets are in between there, with Saturn kind of as an outlier. And she talked about how she almost missed the trend on TikTok because she was a senior at the time, and all like the freshmen and the sophomores were talking about making videos on TikTok. And she's like, oh, I'm a senior. I'm too old for that, right? Which is very Saturnian, right? To be like, I'm too old for that. I'm a senior. I'm not going to do it. But then she decides to do it, and almost instantaneously, she is hit with huge amounts of following and people watching her work. And so we're going to talk about that. But I think it's interesting with the Saturn there in her first house, almost breaking that locomotive pattern, and her almost not deciding to do TikTok, which she would have had a very different life had she not decided to do that. So I think that that is very interesting. Also, Uranus is a planet that likes to do the unexpected and likes to break out of a typecast role, right? So it's like if she's a person where people are saying, oh, you can only be on TikTok, that is the only place that you're going to be any good. You can't transition to be an actress. You can't transition to be a singer. She'll be the person that says, oh no, watch me do it. And she will rebel against the status quo and go and decide to do something different. And that is very Uranian, to go and do something like that. And let's go ahead and take a look here. Now, I wanted to take a look at the role of fixed star Aldebaran. Now, when we look at Addison Rae's chart, okay, Addison Rae, the ruler, so the 10th house right here, do you guys see the number 10 there? The 10th house in astrology has to do with our career and our calling in life. And we always want to check where the ruler of the 10th house is. In this case, the ruler of the 10th house is the Jupiter. Okay, so Jupiter in Gemini is in her first house and is the ruler of her 10th house of career. Now, why I wanted to talk about the fixed star Aldebaran, and the fixed stars are interesting because they're not they're not the zodiac. They're not Aries, Taurus, Gemini. They're not the zodiac, okay? They're not the houses. They're not the planets, okay? The fixed stars, and there's certain ones that we tend to talk about more in astrology, like Regulus or Spica, or we talk about the Pleiades. These are like fixed stars that have an interpretive meaning in astrology, and one we can talk about is the fixed star Aldebaran. Now, I thought it was really interesting because the fixed star Aldebaran in the constellation of Taurus represents the right eye of the bull. In the constellation Taurus, it's a star that represents the right eye of the bull. It's the bull's eye in that constellation. But because of the precession of the equinoxes over time and the tilt of the earth, the location of fixed star Aldebaran, which originally started in Taurus hundreds of years ago, is now at about 9 degrees 47 minutes Gemini. And so when we're looking at charts and we want to know, like, do I have anything in conjunction or aspecting fixed star Aldebaran, you would want to look at you'd want to look if you have any planets near 10, 11, or 8 degrees Gemini. If you have anything at 8, 9, 10, 11 Gemini, then you have something very close to fixed star Aldebaran. And it is a fixed star that has the nature of Mars and Jupiter. It's a fixed star that brings a lot of oomph and energy and, high-spirited, can-do, bullseye, hit the target type of energy to whatever planet it is making a conjunction to, if it's in a conjunction to a planet in your chart. Now, in Addison Rae's chart, the fixed star Aldebaran is in a conjunction with her Jupiter in Gemini. Now, Jupiter rules her 7th house of partnerships and her 10th house of career. Having fixed star Aldebaran on top of her Jupiter in Gemini just makes it even stronger in my view. And what's so funny to me is that the word Aldebaran, it comes from the Persian language and it means the follower. Isn't that interesting? This is a girl who has 88.5 million followers on TikTok. And the fixed star Aldebaran, which is in English means the follower, is actually in a conjunction with the ruler of her 10th house, which is legitimately interesting and kind of crazy. And, when you think about Jupiter in Gemini, anytime we have Jupiter in our chart, it's where we have an abundance of things. And when we have a planet like Jupiter in a sign like Gemini, which tends to multiply things through the airwaves, okay? So her message is being multiplied through the airwaves and is going through the airways in abundance as it's being broadcast, right, with that fixed star of Aldebaran pushing that message out there. So that is a very intense, and I've seen comments before on her video when I was researching her, like, why do so many people follow her? Why do so many people like this girl? Why do so many people? And I think a lot of it is that Jupiter and Gemini in her first house in a conjunction with the fixed star Aldebaran. And so that is very interesting. Jupiter signifies abundance in the chart. And it says, and fixed star Aldebaran, the follower, right? I have a lot of followers that follow me through my messages and through the airways, Jupiter and Gemini. So to me, that was a chef kiss moment there with the astrology of why she has such a powerful following. And I also think with that Jupiter being opposite to Pluto, that Jupiter in Gemini is opposite Pluto in Sagittarius, and I think that just intensifies it even more of people watching her and following her, and the intense expansion, right, of Pluto in Sagittarius, that blowing up and that intense watching and obsession with her. And so I think that is a very interesting thing for her. Now, in astrology, the fixed star Aldebaran indicates popularity, public honor, and gain of power and wealth through others, but its benefits may not be long lasting. And Addison Rae has said before that our opportunities are not endless, and so you need to strike while the iron is hot, basically is what she implied in her statement. And she's truly talking like somebody who has Saturn and Jupiter in the first house, right? Opportunities are not endless, so you have to strike while the iron is hot. And Aldebaran can create like a restless individual who stirs things up And it's like everyone is following me and talking about me due to my career, Gemini. Okay, everyone is following me and talking about me. Um, the fixed star Aldebaran can make us very successful in making money and allow us to get ahead of other people into a leadership position. It's like kind of reminds me of like a slingshot type of an energy because it has the energy of Mars and Jupiter. And it's like when you pull it back and you've got a real powerful pull back and then whoop, and the arrow fires off and it's like immediate slingshot, right? And that is how I see the fixed star Aldebaran for her being a big thing. And so let's go ahead. And it's funny too, because there was a comment by her ex-boyfriend, Bryce Hall, who actually said that they're both very stubborn and hard-headed when they get their mind fixed on something. Now, you wouldn't automatically think that for somebody who's a Gemini rising per se, but the fixed star Aldebaran does carry the nature of Taurus within it. And so that kind of hard-headed, I'm going after it, no one can stop me type of energy is very much coded to that. So I just thought that that was really interesting with that Jupiter and Gemini, and I have a lot of followers. That was quite interesting to me. Now, one thing to keep in mind that Addison Rae is a Gemini rising, and I have a couple things that here that made me reminded me of like Gemini rising. And one of her quotes was, I think I'm just a really curious person. When I start doing something, I want to know everything there is to know about it. That's very Gemini rising. Being a curious person, I want to learn everything about it. Now, originally, Addison Rae went to school for broadcast journalism, and going to school for broadcast journalism is very Gemini rising. Because broadcast journalists, they report news stories, they do interviews, and they relay information under strict deadlines, which is also, Saturn and Gemini in her first house. I'm going to relay information under a strict deadline. I'm going to go to school for broadcast journalism. Okay, but she dropped out to pursue a career in entertainment. And sometimes when we have Gemini, we can see two careers or multiple careers, especially with Jupiter ruling the 10th house. The fact that she was a TikTok social media influencer, and then she went to acting, and then she went to singing, like various multiple careers, or doing two different careers at the same time, or trying to do two things at the same time is very Gemini. And so we can see that, she's been doing that as well. And, the one thing about being a Gemini rising is that she created fun, light, easy to digest sound bites, doing lip syncing, showing that she was a carefree spirit, and she had a very youthful presence around her. And, one thing about a person who has Jupiter rising, they are going to be a fun, cheerful, carefree, energetic spirit. Unless they have other things going on in their chart, which they may, they're going to, Jupiter is really that cheerleader energy in a lot of ways, especially when you put it in Gemini, which is a very youthful, fun, light, easygoing type of energy. And a lot of times when I think about Gemini, I like to compare it to Scorpio. For contrast, because Gemini and Scorpio have no natural relationship in the zodiac. They don't make any aspect to one another. And, being lighthearted and fun and happy and easygoing, can you imagine a Scorpio might look at that and go, they're not being authentic, they're not being real, they're not, there's deeper things going on and they're not looking at it. And they may take that lighthearted, fun energy as being something annoying, and somebody who is Gemini may look at somebody who's always passionate and intense and driven and never lets anything go as being way too over the top. You got to have some fun in life. You got to be lighter. You got to be carefree. You got to be happy, right? So when you look at how, Gemini energy works, it is about light little touches of fun or light little touches of trivia or light little, and one thing about Gemini energy that we're going to look at as we look at her Saturn in Gemini is a fear of not being taken seriously. Because if we're always light and easy and breezy, easy breezy, beautiful cover girl, if we are always in that light and breezy and fun, flirty, I'm a young girl type of energy, we may feel like no one's ever going to take me seriously. No one's ever going to look at me and go, wow, you really know your shit, or wow, you're really smart, or wow, you really know what you're doing in life. If you're constantly playing the role of the light and easygoing, fun girl next door, then there's a tendency to maybe get trapped in that or feel like venturing out of that is challenging to do. So we are definitely going to talk about that as well in her chart. And that just leads me right into my next slide, which was Saturn and Gemini. Now, as I mentioned, Gemini, light, carefree, happy energy. But, for a lot of Gen Zers, especially born around the year 2000, 2001, 2002, around that time when Saturn was in Gemini, there may be a heaviness around that, right? Like a fear of not being taken seriously. Or that you're not looked at as a heavyweight of anything, or that you don't really know anything, or that you weren't adequately prepared for the world. You weren't taught how to do key things that at your age you should know how to do. And so with Saturn and Gemini, we can see like a lack of knowledge or a fear of not knowing or not taking ourselves seriously, or a fear of others not taking us seriously. Now for Addison Rae, she has Saturn in the first house. So those messages of, I'm not a serious person, people aren't going to take me serious, that fear and hesitation, which she probably tries to push down or hide in some way, perhaps, as Saturn also rules her 8th house, and the 8th house can be, what we hide or we don't want others to see. She wants people to see the cheerful, happy cheerleader, happy-go-lucky girl, light, fun, breezy, and not the heavier questioning of, I don't know if I'm good enough, or I don't know if anyone is going to take me seriously, or I don't know if I'm prepared for this, right? That part she may keep to herself and may be harder for her to deal with. And with Saturn and Gemini, that light, happy, fun energy may work against us, where no one is looking at us as a heavyweight, meaning we're not being taken seriously for our knowledge. We're looked at as someone who is not smart. We're looked at as someone who is stupid, who doesn't know anything, or doesn't have any talent. And those messages can really be internalized when Saturn is in your first house, for sure. And Gemini is a sign where we develop skills and we learn to do something new and exciting with our mind. But when we have Saturn in Gemini, there can be a fear and a hesitation of how we will be perceived in learning and doing that. And I know, like in a lot of her videos online, on her lip syncing videos, she does these really interesting hand movements where she goes like that and sticks her tongue out and puts, Dumbo ears on her head and goes like that. And I see that stuff and I'm like, I wonder if when she gets older, if she's going to look back at that and be like, because people may look at that and go, well, those, dumb hand movements, right? Gemini is basically rules over the arms, the fingers, and the hands. And, Saturn and Gemini doing dumb hand movements like that, which might be fun when you're like 5 or 6, but not necessarily too much, right? When you get older, this type of stuff can look kind of cringe. And also, too, there is like people who insult her appearance online quite a bit too. Now, we forget sometimes that the first house in astrology is our body and our physicality and how we look. And when we have Saturn there, we can have a lot of insulting comments about the way we look. And she has had quite a few insulting comments thrown at her, right? And so I think, and with Saturn and Gemini, we sometimes have to learn the hard way around the things that we're saying and doing. And then we get embarrassed by it. And then we're afraid to speak up again. So that can be something that comes up with Saturn and Gemini. Now, I want to talk a little bit go a little deeper on this Saturn and Gemini issue, because people born, like I said, between late 2000 and 2002-ish, around that 2001, 2002, definitely Gen Z, are going to have Saturn and Gemini. So if you hear this video and you're like, that's when I was born and I've got Saturn and Gemini and Natalie, I got these issues, then book a reading with me. We'll talk about it. We'll go into it. Or just listen and, we'll see what we come up with. So Saturn and Gemini issues. Now, Addison Rae went to a university for a few months, okay? And then she dropped out. But she wanted to go for broadcast journalism, right? And because she was blowing up on TikTok at the same time, UFC had, let her interview some people. And actually, I think I heard that she wasn't even acting in a capacity as a reporter at a UFC event, but the way that she posted it made it seem like she was acting in a capacity as a reporter at a UFC boxing event. And here's some stuff that happened, okay? 20-year-old TikTok star shared 2 photographs of herself where she looked as if she was working as a reporter in front of a UFC red carpet banner. She accompanied the photos with tongue-in-cheek captions, right? And tongue-in-cheek captions is very Gemini. Anything tongue-in-cheek, yeah. She wrote on her Instagram post for the UFC, I studied broadcast journalism in college for 3 whole months to prepare for this, okay? And here's a copy of the tweet here that she wrote. And people got really, really pissed off about that, okay? Real pissed about it. Somebody followed up and said it was an obnoxious and tone-deaf slap in the face to the people who actually studied journalism and are trying to make it in that profession. If she showed some humility and humbleness when she announced it, the response may have been different, okay? Basically saying, like, you're rubbing your opportunities that you're getting so easily that you so obviously didn't even study for, you're rubbing it in the face of other people who have to study really hard. Now, that is a Saturnian message, because I'll tell you what, Saturn does not like people who haven't done the work. Saturn does not like bragging. Saturn does not like people who have special advantages. Saturn wants you to do the hard work, okay? And her writing a very flippant, kind of Gemini flippant kind of post like that, like, I studied 3 whole months to get this gig and now I'm a journalist, right? Really pissed people off. And then she wrote a post afterward and wrote, never mind, y'all got me fired, okay? And this was a very tongue-in-cheek response to the, response that she got. And that very sarcastic, dry wit, very tongue-in-cheek, that is very Saturn and Gemini. But she admitted in her post that she is unqualified, right? And that she was making a joke out of it. And here's my point. When you have Jupiter in the first house and opportunities are coming to you rather easily, but you also have Saturn there too, Saturn is going to check you. And here's what I would say. It doesn't feel good to get opportunities we didn't work for. Okay. As a person, you may just feel like, wow, I so want to get all these opportunities, but getting an opportunity that we didn't work for at all, or we have no knowledge about, or we have really no business doing because we don't have any training, doesn't feel good, because we don't feel prepared, and we end up making ourselves the butt of the joke, and we end up putting ourselves down because we know we didn't earn it. As human beings, we know what we've earned and what we didn't earn. We know, okay? And the problem is not to pick on her for that tweet, but the problem is that, she's quite young, right? She's quite young to be having that big of a platform and to be just saying things. She's gonna make mistakes, right? But Saturn in the first house can feel like I'm not allowed to make mistakes, and everything that I say gets put under the microscope, and I can't even make a joke about it, right? So that could also be Saturn and Gemini things that are coming up. But Saturn doesn't like youthful people running around and bragging about things they didn't earn. Saturn is like, no, not today, right? And so Saturn will put you in your place, and it does that for everyone. Saturn is very democratic when it comes to that. And, her post was kind of insulting towards people who do study, right? And Saturn and Gemini could be like not having a respect for knowledge or insulting people who are studying, right? And, but with Gemini, things can get taken out of context, or a joke can be said or done in a way that offends people, but you didn't mean it type thing. Okay. So anyway, it's a catch-22 with that Gemini energy. And for those of you that have Saturn and Gemini and you watch this video, feel free to leave a comment about it. Let me know how that catch-22 energy manifests for you, if it manifests in the same way. But I will always maintain that getting opportunities that you truly are not prepared for and that you have no training in is, at the end of the day, it may feel fun at first, but at the end of the day, I think it really feels like crap, because you start to realize I don't deserve this, or I'm not ready for this, right? Type of thing. So anyway, she ends up dropping out of college, and she ends up going to LA to try to further her career there. So just to touch a little bit more on the co-presence of Saturn and Jupiter in her first house, okay? And one thing I wanted to note was the speed of the planets, because Jupiter and Saturn had both stationed retrograde just a week or two before she was born. And they were both moving very, very slowly when she was born. And what I wrote about that is patterns in her life of being given very big opportunities at a young age, but she may not be prepared for the responsibility that entails, or for the weight of the responsibility of what that entails. Also, because Saturn and Jupiter are both in her first house, I feel like, and the first house is our appearance, there's people online gassing her up about her appearance and worshiping her about her appearance, while at the same time insulting her for having no talent or body shaming her. And Gemini is where we can have those big experiences of duality. You love me and you hate me. You think I'm amazing and beautiful, and you also think I'm the scum of the earth, right? So or you think I'm ugly, or all these comments, these body shaming comments that people would tell her. And this can result in exaggerated experiences where we are regarded highly and loved, and also simultaneously hated and despised. I'm the best person in the world. I'm the worst person in the world. That can do a number on a person's self-esteem and create a lot of self-doubt. She gets a lot of benefits and she gets a lot of opportunities with Jupiter in the first house, but everyone tells her she didn't earn it and she has no talent. And it's even harder because her chart is a night chart. And when we talk about day versus night, she was born at 10, let's see if I can get that close and read it. I think it's 10:28. I don't know, it's too small. 10:26 or 10:28 p.m. Okay, and her sun is below the horizon, so she has a night chart. So that means that Saturn is the out of sect malefic, which makes Saturn very, very malefic. And it did go retrograde. It was basically stationing at the time she was born. So, I mean, that is a powerful Saturn, but it brings her down at times. I feel like it also accounts for, I feel like, her childhood, where she talks about, the instability and like having to live in a camper with only one bedroom in it, and, having a lot of economic instability growing up, and, being very like, not just her family not having a lot of money and things like that. Because she has that Saturn there in the first house. And then Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini and is the out of sect benefic. So it's not as, now again, it's conjunction the fixed star Aldebaran. So that gives it a huge boost, right? But it also has some problems. It's in detriment. It's the out of sect benefic, so it's not as strong. Okay. And that can mean that the Saturn energy is really outweighing things and making her feel bad about herself, or making her feel like, I don't have any skills, I'm insecure, I don't know what my talents are. And, being insecure and wanting other people to like you. Addison Rae is a Libra, and a lot of Libras can have that within them as well, feeling insecure, being nice to others because they want other people to like them and they don't want confrontation. Okay. So this can affect our confidence as a woman, in particular when people are insulting our appearance. And also, Saturn is an energy of shrinking when it comes to the physical body. Saturn represents long, tall, lean bodies, but Jupiter represents big, expansive bodies. So, she talks about how growing up, her body was like fluctuating a lot. Like she would lose weight, she would gain weight, she would lose, she would gain. And because everyone was watching her, they were always commenting about her body and, whether she was gaining or losing weight, which had a big effect on her self-esteem. Okay. And, a lot of people who know her say that she's a genuinely nice and humble person, which I could see with Jupiter rising and Saturn rising. I mean, Saturn, it's good in a way that Saturn is there because it kind of brings her back down to earth a little bit and checks her. But maybe it's very, very strong too. That is a very strong Saturn and probably has had a major effect on her self-esteem as well. Okay. And yeah. And she does get a lot of hate comments about her body. When I'm talking here about Saturn and Gemini in the first house, Saturn is a planet that in a negative way can really have to do with hate, or getting a lot of hate and getting a lot of hateful comments about her body. Saturn and Gemini in the first house, people giving her really backhanded compliments and telling her, that's so brave of you to wear that with your body type, right? Which is a very backhanded compliment to give to someone. telling them they're so brave for wearing a swimsuit or whatever. And a Libra rising is going to notice, or not a Libra rising, but she's a sun in Libra. A Libra is going to notice that, okay? A Libra will notice a backhanded compliment because it's very passive aggressive, right? Like, oh, you look so great today. I love that you're wearing that color. You'd think that it would never look good with your skin tone. You know, like those kind of comments to people are kind of crazy. And people were giving her a lot of comments like that online, you know, and that is one of the prices of fame is all this exposure, but at the same time, like having to endure tons and tons of hate comments is also there as well. And it says here, the social media star noted that she's been attending therapy, which has been really helpful just to not feel so down on myself. So here she is admitting that there is times that she feels really down on herself. Self-worth is a big thing that I've been working on the past few months because it's definitely a real struggle and it does affect your daily life not having high self-worth, okay? Saturn in the first house. She shared this in an interview. Therapy is a great way to work on that, and it's an outlet to speak on things that are bothering you internally, right? And that bothering internally, I feel, is very the Saturn rising. You know, that is probably definitely bothering her internally, that sense of not feeling good enough and getting hate comments about her body. Now, and sometimes with Saturn and Gemini, it can feel like there's things that are too painful to talk about. We can avoid talking about certain topics because it's just too hard to approach it. And I feel like that may be kind of an issue in her chart with the Saturn and Gemini. Gemini is a sign of communication, but notice how her Jupiter in Gemini is in a quincunx to that Mercury. Okay, so the Mercury is the ruler of her ascendant, okay, because she's a Gemini rising. So this Mercury in Scorpio is all the way over in the 6th house, and it isn't making an aspect to her, which says, you know, I prefer to be private and I prefer to keep my thoughts to myself. And when it comes to the more painful, deeper things in my life, I don't want to talk to everybody about that. And in fact, talking about painful, deep topics may be something that I want to avoid, particularly with the Saturn in Gemini. So I can see why therapy would be a big help for her. Okay. And Jupiter in the 1st house. Okay. And again, I talked about how Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini, and it is in a challenging relationship with her Mercury. So she may not have the best attention span. There may be times when she talks a lot about nothing, but struggles to talk about the deeper psychological issues that she's having. That's why, yeah, therapy, like I said, very good idea. With Jupiter in the 1st house in Gemini, she excelled on an app where she dances, entertains, lip sings, and does funny little skits. May come off as not a deep thinker, but likable, cheerful, and social, okay? And the funny thing is that she has Mercury in Scorpio. So she is a deep thinker, but how to connect with that within her, right? And because it's in Scorpio, it has to do with being courageous and going deep and going towards the things that are difficult and uncomfortable, which can be hard for someone who's a Libra sun with Jupiter rising. It's like, I always have to be likable. I always have to be cheerful. I always have to be the fun girl. I can't just genuinely have a moment where I'm questioning myself or trying to go deeper with what I'm thinking and feeling. And so I can see why that is, you know, that may be an issue for her. Also, with her Jupiter not connecting to her Mercury, she did talk about having ADHD, which is very Gemini anyway, but with it not connecting well with her Mercury, it's like it's hard for me to stay focused on one thing, or it's hard for me to be logical about things sometimes. So I had wondered about that. Also, with Jupiter and Gemini in the first house, she did have a podcast called That Was Fun. And she mainly talked about music and fashion with her mom on the podcast. So, Jupiter and Gemini is very much a podcasting type of a thing. And I also wanted to mention here, this is interesting to me, this little thing here with the Jupiter and Gemini in her first house, okay? Remember how I told you she has very little Earth in her chart? She just has Mars and Virgo in her fourth house. See, there's her Mars and Virgo in the fourth house. The rest of her chart is mostly air and a teeny bit of earth and fire, water and fire, but that's it. Okay. And so she has this, she made this post where she put, this was a picture of her TikTok. And her post says, "I love sitting and laying on the ground. It makes me happy." Now, one thing I've noticed is when people have a missing element in their chart, like let's say your chart is all fire, air, and no water. Okay. People that have all fire and air but no water tend to crave being near the water because they don't really have any of that element in their chart, and it helps them calm down and balance out, right? Somebody who doesn't have any earth in their chart basically at all except for Mars, and Mars is not very relaxing, right? So somebody who has little to no earth in their chart is probably going to enjoy laying around or sitting around on the ground or meditating on the ground, because it's like, okay, I've got no earth in my chart. I need to chill out and ground. But people made fun of her, and like somebody wrote, "This is literally so crazy," and accused her of being like very simple and basic and like not posting anything very intelligent, right? Like, "Oh, this is literally so crazy. You love laying on the ground." And it's kind of mean. That's kind of mean, right? To like, she could just be genuinely happy to share a moment, which Jupiter and Gemini in the first house could be just genuinely happy to share something they like with other people. But other people are like, "Oh, you're being a quirky tryhard, or you're overly simplistic, or you're a basic person who isn't a deep thinker, and you're not very smart." Like a lot of people kind of taking it really far, I feel like, insulting her. And some people could have thought that, okay, she's just trying to appeal to everyone by posting something really bland, versus someone who is genuinely happy to share a nice moment with other people. And I'd argue with the Jupiter and Gemini in the first house that she is probably just genuinely trying to share a nice moment with people. And because she literally has no earth in her chart, hardly any, like I can imagine she enjoys laying on the ground. So I think some of these things are kind of interesting astrologically. I mean, if only we knew everybody's chart and everybody knew that beforehand, then and some people may say, well, that's a little simplistic, right? Jupiter and Gemini, maybe not very cultured, maybe kind of simplistic. And one thing I think Addison Rae does need to watch out for, and if I was her astrologer, I would tell her, make sure if you're doing things that are culturally sensitive, meaning you're copying dancers from, African American creators, which she has, right? Make sure you're crediting them, which I think she learned along the way. These are not my dances. These are other people's dances that they made up, and I am not crediting them, okay? And I think she did apologize for that. But One thing I would say about her chart with the Jupiter in Gemini opposite the Pluto in Sagittarius in her seventh house, I would tell her be very careful of the people you collaborate with the brands, with other people. Be careful you're not tying yourself to people that are culturally insensitive. And if you're gonna post something that you feel could be culturally insensitive in any way, make sure you check that with someone else, because there could be a very, a very intense response by other people. Okay, Pluto and Sagittarius in the seventh house. If you're posting things that are culturally insensitive because of your lack of knowledge about the world. Now, keep in mind, she grew up in Louisiana, like in a pretty small town, moved to Texas, moved to Louisiana, and she gets this internet fame at a very young age before she's really had chance to explore the world or understand the world on a deeper level. And you can step into some potholes, right? If you don't know and you're not super aware of cultural sensitivities around you, you can really step in some mud. You can really foul things up there. And because she has, and Sagittarius is a sign you have to be a little bit careful with, because there's an excitement to learn everything and do everything and go everywhere and have things get real intense really quickly, but there can be a lack of judgment as well, if it's taken too far. And so that is one thing, like if I was her astrologer, I would out of the gate tell her, be very careful who you're collaborating with, who you're doing brand deals with, who you're working with. Make sure you research them and you understand their position on major world issues. And if you don't align with what they're putting out, I wouldn't do it, okay? Because people are going to read it in a very intense way, all right? So those are some things that I would let her know with that Pluto in Sagittarius opposite her Jupiter in Gemini. And it's like, I am culturally unaware and I've had all these big opportunities at a very young age, but I don't really know about the world yet. And so I will probably step in some mud type of issues, okay? So watching out for that. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about why she is so likable to a lot of people and why she has gotten the insane level of popularity and brand deals that she has gotten, okay? And this, when people are like, why does everyone like this girl? Why is she getting all these opportunities? Why? When everyone is asking these questions, astrologically, this is what I would point to, okay? Now, one quote that Addison Rae talked about was that she genuinely loves performing, okay? Whether it's doing dances on TikTok, whether it's singing for a crowd, whether it's dancing for a crowd or cheerleading, because she was a cheerleader in high school as well. Dancing, singing, acting, she loves it all, right? And when we see she has that sun in Libra in the fifth house is where we perform. And we genuinely do things for pleasure. I'm doing this art and this music and this dancing because I genuinely love performing for people. And I'm a high energy person that wants to share my artistry with the rest of the world, okay? Sun in Libra. And that sun in Libra is in a trine to her Jupiter in Gemini in the first house. It's a pretty tight trine. It's within 3 degrees. And the Jupiter rules her 10th house, right? And that sun rules the 3rd house. Now, the 3rd and the 9th house in the chart can be where we see marketing, advertising, branding, slogans, all types of stuff like that. So the ruler of her 3rd house is in the 5th house of dancing and creativity. And what is she doing? She's selling herself as a brand, basically, right? The ruler of her 10th house is in the 1st house. I'm selling myself as a brand to you. And I am a cheerful, fun girl who loves to dance and loves to be creative and loves to be an artist and loves to make things up and everything that I like to do. And I am a very likable girl, and therefore I can sell whatever it is that you want me to sell. Now, oftentimes, when we see the sun in the fifth house trining Jupiter in the first house, we could see that this is a happy, fun person who easily shares joy with others through movement, dance, art, being a cheerleader. The fifth house is also a house of sport, right? Doing sports, cheerleading is a sport. And a person who loves entertaining and acting, okay? I do it for fun. And she actually made a quote of, I'm doing this because I have a joy. I take joy in performing, okay? So I think that is really, Jupiter in the first house, trine the sun in the fifth house. This is a happy-go-lucky person who's always smiling with a good attitude, who's cheerful and fun. And because her sun is in Libra, she likes girly, artistic things. She likes to gossip about relationships and boys. She's a cheerleader with a positive outlook who's into encouraging others. And there's a quote of her as a cheerleader where she's standing with her. They interviewed her when she was like a high school cheerleader, and they showed a clip of it. And she said, when our team wins, it feels like we're winning, meaning when the football players win, it feels like we, the cheerleaders, are also winning, right? That's a very positive kind of attitude towards things. And, Sun trine Jupiter in air signs, right? Energetic, hyper, happy, positive, looking at the bright side of things, especially in Libra, having a sugary, sweet personality, somebody who seeks harmony, who wants to be liked, somebody who's popular, easily likable and attractive, okay? Libra is a Venus-ruled sign, as we know. And, we just have Mars in the fourth house there, which, Mars is a bit of a troublemaker oftentimes, but it's hidden in her fourth house. So we don't really see that angry side of her. What we see is a smiling, happy-go-lucky girl. And, maybe she's used to keeping that anger hidden or keeping that anger under wraps if she, when she does feel anger towards something. And the Saturn there tells me that she perhaps tells herself, even if you are suffering inside of yourself, all right, Saturn in the first house, even if you are suffering within yourself, show your best side, okay? And that is a very Southern charm kind of a thing. Like, even if you are doing bad within yourself, put on a big smile and entertain others and make others feel good, And that's a beautiful thing, but it can get out of hand if we just continually shove down the sadness, or we never talk about it, or we never really get those feelings out. And I wanted to show you guys this picture of her. As I mentioned earlier, she has the grand Air Trine. She's got the three planets, Jupiter, Sun, and Uranus, that are in a grand Air Trine. And somebody asked her if she, because she's so hyper, they're like, do you do cocaine? And she's like, I don't. I have ADHD. I have a lot of energy, and I talk really crazy. That's just who I am, okay? That's a very grand Air Trine kind of a quote there. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about this grand Air Trine that we have going on here. Now, grand trines are beautiful gifts from the universe. Not everybody has them in their charts. Sometimes we can take it a little too easy, or sometimes we don't always appreciate what we have with the grand trines, or it can be a little bit too much sometimes. But generally, they're a very positive thing, okay, whenever we have a grand trine. And that just means that we have three planets within all three of the signs. So if you had a grand trine in fire, you would have Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. You'd have a planet in each one, and they'd all be in aspect to one another. Now for Addison Rae, she has a grand trine in air. She's got Uranus trine Jupiter. She's got Jupiter trine her sun, and then her sun trine Uranus. Do you guys see that blue triangle on the screen there? Okay, that blue triangle is representing, if you see that in your chart, that means you've got a grand trine, all right? It's the blue triangle there, all right? So her grand trine involves Jupiter, which is the ruler of her 10th house, okay? It involves the sun in the 5th house, and the Uranus that I was talking about earlier about the technology, and that Uranus being the leading planet in her chart and oozing all its energy as the highest planet in her chart. Okay, so this is a powerful grand trine. This is another reason why she gets a ton of brand deals. This is another reason why she's very good at self-promotion, or she's been very successful at self-promotion, especially through the use of technology in social media, Uranus and Aquarius, okay? And when we see Sun, Jupiter, Uranus, grand trine in air, we could say that could represent a sudden and shocking growth in self-promotion, okay? The sun is the self-promotion, the shocking part is the Uranus, and the shocking and sudden part is the Uranus, and the growth is Jupiter. So it's sudden, shocking growth in self-promotion that she has achieved. And because of this grand air trine, she has the ability to grow and change very suddenly and very quickly. And she can't be pigeonholed into just one thing. Like a lot of social media stars can only be, TikTok star. They can't do anything else. They're not going to, they don't have that versatility, but she does. Okay. She has a grand air trine. And she is versatile, connected, popular, social, inventive, different. She uses technology in a way that amplifies her brand, okay? Our sun is our brand and who we are, right? So she is able to grow and amplify her brand through using technology. It's a very clear aspect in her chart. Very, very clear. And it's like, who's going to grow up and be a social media star? This person, right? Like you can tell it in her chart, right? And so she has, with the Jupiter trine Uranus, she has good luck with social media and new technology. Not everyone can figure out technology. Not everyone is good at it. There's a video of her, I think it was her on the Ellen show. I forget what show it was, but she was talking about how she started using TikTok and how she picked it up right away, and she knew how to edit the videos right away and upload them. And I know it's not like that hard, but editing things or doing like special effects in the video or doing these little things in the video to make them better and make them more interactive. Like that is very Uranian, to be able to pick up new technology and just run with it and learn it right away. And she was saying TikTok is easy to use and edit. And she has the freedom to be herself and express herself as an artist. And it may seem like with the trine to Uranus there that she doesn't have to follow the same rules as other people. And that may make other people very jealous, which again is leading to the hateful comments that she gets sometimes. And her sudden success and growth are taking her to a higher level. And Jupiter rules her 10th house of career, and the part of fortune, which has to do with money and happiness, is also in her 10th house. And so, making money through her career, being really happy with her career, doing a good job, being able to really see a lot of growth in her career. And she is selling herself as her brand and making money off of it. Really, okay? And our sun is our ability to attract attention to ourselves. Okay. And that sun is picking up Jupiter, which is growth, and Uranus with this technology. So I am able to grow my brand and gain attention and attraction to myself through the use of technology. It's a very clear grand trine. Very, very clear. And her chart, I mean, yeah, that's clear as day. In my opinion, that is clear as day. I also wanted to talk about like salespeople, okay? Because she is selling her brand as herself, right? And I wrote a quote that says, when you go to buy something, whether you're a social media star and you're promoting a brand, or you're going to buy a car, when you go to buy something and you're meeting with the salesperson, do you want to talk to someone who's happy and smiling and has cheerleader kind of energy, who looks very nice and easy to talk to? Libra, okay, Sun in Libra. Or do you want to talk to a mean curmudgeon with a bad attitude who's full of piss and vinegar? Okay. That's more of the Saturnian side of things, right? If you're going to buy something, you want to talk to a salesperson who's pleasant and nice and possibly attractive and easy to talk to and approachable. Okay, that's a very Sun in Libra, trine Jupiter and Gemini. Someone who's social and easy to talk to and makes you feel comfortable, and somebody who's happy and smiling. You don't really want to talk to a mean curmudgeon with a bad attitude who's full of piss and vinegar, okay? And so I think that's part of her appeal as well with the Sun trine Jupiter. Now, when I see Sun trine Jupiter, I think of somebody who's very good at branding themselves, or somebody who's very good at selling themselves to you, or selling a product to you. Okay. And it was funny because it kind of reminded me of Donald Trump in a way, because he has the Sun in Gemini, trine Jupiter in Libra, and he wrote The Art of the Deal. He likes to pass himself off as the number one fun guy, and that you're a winner if you hang out with him. He's also branded everything with his personal name as well. Now, Addison Rae has the reverse of that. She has Sun in Libra with Jupiter in Gemini. So she has opposite to Donald Trump as far as the signs go, but she has that trine between her Sun and Jupiter. Now, there's a lot of people in the world who have Sun trine Jupiter. Some of those people that are very Jupiterian, that have a good relationship to their Sun, are amazing salesmen. And if you are a social media influencer, that's really what you're doing. You're selling yourself to sell a brand, basically. Sun trine Jupiter. Pretty easy concept there. And, the Sun in her chart rules the third house, and the third house does have to do with marketing, advertising, promotions, slogans. And the third and ninth house as a whole could have to do with movement of product, both far and wide, locally and internationally. And, her ability to move product locally and internationally is really high. And, the third house is a house of movement. So I can move this product for you. And she has this Sun Jupiter trine, and that is the winning salesperson, and the ability to put your personal brand behind something and establish faith and goodwill with the consumer. And, Sun trine Jupiter could be the lucky salesman who, the instant someone walks in to buy a car, they're walking straight to that person and they just get the sale right away. Okay. And not everybody has that energy in life, but Sun trine Jupiter people, they can have that type of energy. And she does have that in her chart. And it allows us to inspire confidence in the deal through art and music and dancing, right? Because her Sun is in Libra and Jupiter is in Gemini. So everyone is talking about it, and she's doing it through art and music and dancing. And it's really funny because she starred in the movie He's All That on Netflix. And a lot of people said that movie was just like a big, huge product placement ad, because they kept showing different brands and things like that. And that's part of her allure. It's not just that she has tons of followers, which she does, but it's also that, she comes across as personable, cheerleader, smiling, happy, happy-go-lucky, non-threatening, somebody that can sell you a product, right? And it is a natural talent that she has in her chart. It just really, really blew up for her very, very quickly. She could have easily been selling diamonds at Zales, or whatever other, she could have easily been selling cars on a used car lot, or probably not with that sun in the fifth house, but you guys know what I mean. There's a salesperson aspect big time. And when people are like, how is she getting all these brand deals? Why does everyone like her? I would point them right to the Sun Jupiter trine. Absolutely. Okay. And doing it through technology, Uranus, right? Now, I want to move on to a different topic. I want to move on to talking about her family a little bit here. Now, this is where things are going to get a little bit juicy, okay? Because this family, we already know Mars is in Virgo in the fourth house. So we know there's going to be some drama there with Mars in the fourth. We can already feel it coming, okay? Now, Addison Rae has, I believe, 2 little brothers, but she also has a mom and a dad. Now, this woman here is her mom, okay? And this gentleman here is her dad. Okay, Sherry is her mom. Monty is her father. Now, the interesting thing is that when Addison Rae blew up, her family also went online and made profiles as well. And actually, her mom was originally doing dances with her. So people knew who her mom was right away. You can see her mom is wearing this t-shirt that says "Cool Mom" on it and is doing a dance with Addison that got her noticed right away. And then here's her dad, who her father worked in the realtor business, but he also worked at Walmart, Yogurtland, and he also at one point started an OnlyFans, okay? And her mom, Sherry, was a makeup artist and a single mom for plenty of years while the father was off doing other stuff. Now, her dad is really into boxing and fitness and all of that. Her parents are in their 40s, okay? Her mom is my age, but her mom is very, I'm the cool mom, hang out with you type of mom, I think, would do videos with her. Her dad was one of those really kind of macho guys, okay? But her parents were off and on growing up. Actually divorced and got remarried and then divorced again. And a lot of drama, a lot of it coming from the dad, who was continually running around on the mom or cheating on Addison's mom, okay? So I don't know. Do you guys know who Young Gravy is? Okay, if you know who Young Gravy is, you know that he is a rapper. I think he's in his early 30s now. But he's a white boy rapper, and he's kind of smooth or whatever, kind of R&B rap. And he has a thing for liking MILFs, okay? Moms I'd like to fuck, MILFs, okay? So Young Gravy is very into MILFs. Well, what happened is these two split up once again because he was running around with other women. And Addison's mom, started talking to Young Gravy online on TikTok. And Young Gravy asked her out on a date and asked her to go to an awards ceremony with him and was going to take her out. Okay, when that happened, her father flipped out and started making these really cringe videos on TikTok, and where he was challenging Young Gravy to a boxing match, okay? And was telling him that he was going to quote unquote Chris rock him, okay, that he was going to rock him and fuck him up, and he was challenging him to a boxing match. Now, her dad is almost 50 years old, okay, and he's online threatening a 30-year-old that's trying to take out her mother as a result of him cheating on the mom with a bunch of young girls who are in their 20s, okay? So this is a wild situation. Now, supposedly her dad started an OnlyFans during the whole thing, and he wrote, "Unleash the beast" on his OnlyFans. "Unleash the beast. Women love me. Men want to be me. Social media can't handle me being raw." Okay? That's what he wrote on his OnlyFans. Now, all of this is going on online. All the drama, the fighting, the challenging of Young Gravy to a boxing match, all of it is going on online. It's a really nasty situation. And at one point, Addison stopped following both her dad and her mom online and basically blocked their accounts online. She's like, I don't want anything to do with this, and just blocked them. Now, she wouldn't talk about it. She wouldn't really, say what happened or why it happened. She wouldn't go into it, but she blocked both of them on social media. Now, I'm telling you guys this really long story for a reason, okay? Because I want to talk about emotionally immature parents, and I want to talk about how that shows up in the astrology chart, okay? So her father is almost 50 years old, having an affair with a 25-year-old woman who's just a few years older than Addison, okay, while he was still married to Addison's mom. And then he was hitting on 19-year-old girls in a club. And, and this girl, this 19-year-old that he was hitting on in a club, wrote this message saying, Addison Rae's dad is trying to F me, okay? So there's all this kind of stuff going on. And I imagine she was very embarrassed by the whole thing. Now, this is Young Gravy, the 30-year-old R&B guy, rapper guy who loves older women, okay? And here's him taking out Addison Rae's mother out on a date. Now, as a result of him doing that, Addison Rae's dad wrote a song called Leftovers and actually released a song dedicated to Young Gravy about him taking out Addison's mom. Now, I'm not going to read all the lyrics, but I'm like, a 50-year-old wrote this? Okay, like this is very, and again, we're going to talk about the astrology of it all, but I'm like, what is going on? A 50-year-old wrote it. So some of the lyrics of the song are, "Hey, little gravy." Now, this is Addison Rae's father writing to the guy that's dating her mom. He wrote this song, put it out. It's an actual song, okay? "Hey, little gravy, this is for you, bro. Fuck you and F them hoes. I'm a villain in a villa. I stole your B word, okay? That new gin fame. I could help you make a living. Till you apologize, you'll never be forgiven. I'm Michael Jordan. You are not Scottie Pippen. In the studio with your girl, she a fan. You just stuck at home with your D in your hand. I be dirty dancing. I'm stealing all your hoes. You'll be going broke. You'll be stealing all your flow. Step into the ring and put your head on a swivel. I make your girls ASS go jiggle jiggle, okay? What is this guy doing, okay? This is Addison Rae's dad. Now, we're not quite to the end of this yet, because online, one of Addison Rae's friends or another social media influencer told her dad to stop, because I think her dad was legitimately scaring her mother too, and told him to like back off, right? One of Addison Rae's friends. And he told the girl, this 26-year-old girl who told him to back off, who happened to be one of Addison Rae's friends, he told her to go take a bath, implying that she was dirty. And then she wrote, "I'm going to call the police." And then he said, "About your body count?" ? Implying that Addison Rae's friend is a loose woman, basically. So we've got a 50-year-old man online having a meltdown, yelling at her friends. I mean, this had to be so embarrassing for her. I cannot even imagine. And, so Addison Rae's mother wrote a comment when he was like online melting down and said, "I know this video may seem funny to some of you, but I am terrified of this man. Okay. No, you don't understand. I'm truly scared of him." Okay. So this is Addison Rae's father. Now this just has to be really, really hard to deal with. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about emotionally immature parents, okay? And I'm going to talk more. Now, this could be like the mom being emotionally immature and the father being emotionally immature, okay? And I'm going to talk about two sides of the coin. Now, you could have a father acting like a mom being a certain way or a woman acting like a man, but you'll see why I'm basically putting them in two categories, okay? So let's talk about, for instance, what an emotionally immature family or mother may look like, okay? Now, I want you guys to remember that Addison Rae has a Moon-Neptune conjunction in her chart. Now, I've read for many people that have Moon-Neptune, like I've had many clients that have Moon-Neptune conjunction in their chart. So I've talked to them about that, and many times there's a parent that has an addiction, boundaries may not be respected, they may be treating their child like their unpaid therapist, or really codependent on their child, or really, really attaching to their child and like not letting them go, okay? And especially when the moon is in Aquarius, the mother may be really bonded to the child in a way where they're trying to act like their child's best friend instead of their mother. Now, I'm sure you guys are aware of the moms that do this, or maybe you've experienced this in your own family. Now, I think it's really interesting that her mom was wearing this t-shirt that says "Cool Mom" on it. So somebody who really puts a lot of emphasis on being the cool mom may be trying to keep up with their daughter or do what their daughter is doing and really, really attaching to them without boundaries and trying to be, quote unquote, their best friend, okay? And the reason why that is emotionally immature when a child is growing up is because they're not their best friend. They're their mother, okay? And they shouldn't be attached to their child in a vice grip or treating their child like their unpaid free therapy, okay? And so a lot of times in charts where there's bad emotional boundaries in the family or the parents are not emotionally mature, we can see Moon-Neptune issues. Now, like I said, in Addison Rae's chart, we definitely have Moon-Neptune, okay? My parents are trying to be my best friend. They're really attached to me and they won't really leave me alone too much. They're trying to be my best friend when I really need guidance or someone who isn't trying to, quote unquote, be my best friend all the time. Okay. The other thing I'll point out here is the fourth house in astrology represents family. And the ruler of that fourth house is the Mercury, okay? The Mercury in Scorpio. And that fourth house ruler is squaring the Moon-Neptune conjunction. So the ruler of my fourth house of family, Mercury in Scorpio, is squaring the Moon-Neptune conjunction. So that tells me there's a communication issue in that family. There's pretending like everything's okay when it's not. There's avoiding deep topics or deep issues or hanging on to resentment and distrust for a long period of time with maybe not talking about it and just kind of glossing over it like everything is okay. Now, that is another thing that emotionally immature parents will do as well, okay? So we've got that issue going on. Now, for those of you that have Moon Neptune in your own chart and you're like, yeah, that's what my parent is like too. They want me to be their free therapy. They want me. And a lot of Moon Neptune, like I said, we can see addictions. We can see parents who are drinking too much, parents who, all of that energy. But with Moon Neptune, we can see an overly dependent parent who is insecure and sticks to their children like glue, okay? With Moon Neptune, we can see psychic energy vampire parents who are addicted and have trouble with boundaries, okay? We can also see helpless, needy parents who don't have their own lives outside of the lives of their own children, okay? We can also see, especially when the moon is in Aquarius, cool moms who want to be their child's best friend but end up smothering them, okay? And with Moon Neptune, we can see parents who are emotionally reliant on a child. The child is sensitive, Moon Neptune, and feels bad for not being there for mom. The parent needs a lot of emotional support and caretaking, which can become emotionally overwhelming to the child, treating the child as their free therapist, okay? Moon Neptune conjunction. Now, it reminded me of Demi Moore, whose chart I've done on my channel, who had the moon opposite Neptune in her chart, and her mother was constantly a victim, was very emotionally dramatic and dependent on Demi Moore, and treated her like a sister friend instead of as a mother-daughter, and had no boundaries in the relationship, was very addicted. And Demi Moore was very compassionate. And even though her mother mistreated her in a lot of ways, she ended up taking care of her mother when she was sick and forgiving her at the very end, which is very Moon Neptune. But Moon Neptune says, how do I stay compassionate and still love people and still be forgiving to people without letting them completely overwhelm me? Okay. And that is an issue. That's definitely an issue in Addison Rae's chart. And with the moon in Aquarius, she is going to want to be independent. And that moon is also making a trine to Saturn, which, do you guys see that? The moon in Aquarius, trine Saturn in Gemini. I think Addison Rae, as she gets older, is going to figure out that in some ways she's actually more mature than her parents. And I think as she gets older, she's going to need more space in her life, okay? And she's probably already doing that right now. But I think as she grows and learns and gets older, she is a person that is going to need space and independence and emotional freedom, and be able to say that she needs a boundary there without hurting the other person in a way where she still loves the other person, but she's also communicated the boundary. Okay, so I think this is something that she really will have a lot of things in her life, about this issue, but I think she's going to handle it well, particularly as she gets older, because Saturn does favor age and learning and wisdom. So I think as she gets older, she's going to become even better at handling it. But she may realize as she gets older that she's actually more emotionally mature than some of the people in her family, or more emotionally mature even than her parents, which could be quite the realization, The other thing about emotionally immature parents that I would like to talk about from a masculine perspective is for those of you out there who have fathers who have extremely aggressive attitudes, who put on a tough guy macho routine and get super excited and hyped up to do dumb and risky things, okay? Now, that's fun when you're a guy and you're a teenager and you're a young adult. getting all testosterone and pumped up and crazy and come at me, bro, and, hitting the chest and me Tarzan, you Jane. I mean, that could be all a lot of fun when you're a teenager and a young adult. But when you're a parent of young children or teenagers and you're in your 50s, some of this behavior needs to chill out a little bit, okay? And the thing is that I want to talk about the masculine side of having an emotionally immature parent. Now, Addison Rae has a very tight T-square in her chart, which is a very tense formation of planets, and it involves Jupiter, Mars, and Pluto, okay? So Jupiter is squaring Mars, and Mars is squaring Pluto, and then Jupiter and Pluto are opposing each other. So that is what we call a T-square in astrology, and that can really cause like a lot of macho type of behavior, okay? So I wrote here, Mars, Pluto, Jupiter, emotionally, sorry, my dog is barking a little bit, you guys. But I want to talk about fathers with extremely aggressive attitudes. And these types of guys, they may lack self-awareness. They may engage in obnoxious theatrics or embarrassing and cringe behavior, acting and saying and doing things without thinking like a teenager would. Okay, no impulse control, Mars square Jupiter, very little impulse control. Jupiter is in Gemini, feeding into that Gemini energy. Gemini is very associated with youth, okay? So, and when you have Gemini square Mars and Virgo, Jupiter and Gemini square Mars and Virgo, you have somebody who is acting without thinking, okay? Who is just saying, fuck the plan, who cares, I'm just gonna go for it. And, this would include, and then you have Mars squaring Pluto, which is actually can be quite scary. And that is when, her father is doing things like romantically pursuing people who are your child's age, okay? Creepy predator behavior, lack of self-control, not knowing when to quit, and acting without thinking. These are the signs of, particularly with fathers who could be very emotionally immature, using rage and overpowering to control others, okay? Mars, Pluto, starting fights with your child's peers and friends and bullying people younger than you and half your age. This is all signs of parents who are emotionally immature, okay? And when we see Mars Jupiter aspects, that can indicate people where they believe that might makes right, or they have that big shot swagger going on, or they have a very over the top bravado, okay? Which when you get to be 50 years old as a parent and you have teenagers, maybe it's time to tone it down a notch, okay? And I just want to talk about in astrology where we have, planets on the angles. So the angles in astrology are, any planets that are in the first house, the 10th, the 7th, or the 4th, okay? These are going to be very powerful planets. Now, we talked about earlier how the only Earth energy that she has in her chart is the Mars in Virgo squaring, and that's basically it. Now, that Mars is in her 4th house of family. Okay. And, the 4th house is where things can get a little hidden. Now, one thing I wonder about Addison Rae is, I think she sometimes maybe has a hard time talking about the things that really bother her with Mercury and Scorpio in the 6th house. And it's not really making any aspect to her 1st house. She may have issues talking about the deeper things that really bother her, maybe because she doesn't want to hurt people's feelings, okay? Or it just makes her uncomfortable, And the thing of the matter is that Mars in Virgo, that stings, with her family. And people, here's the thing, people being critical about her family may make her really angry. As much as that macho behavior, predatory behavior that her father has shown, Mars square Pluto, it probably really embarrasses her or makes her upset or maybe even makes her angry when people are making critical comments about her family. Or she is trying to hide her anger and criticism towards her parents, okay? Because Mars and Virgo can be where, criticism is taking on. There's anger and there's criticism, and things aren't perfect and things aren't the way they should be. So we want to fight about it, okay? But it's in a hidden house here, and it's inside of her family. So, a lot of times in the branch of astrology that I studied, the fourth house is representing the father, not the mother, but the father. And so, one thing we can say in astrology is that location by determination is immediate. So, or determination by location is immediate, meaning if we have a planet in a particular house, it's going to color all the activities of that house. So there's some hidden anger about things not being the way they should be in her family. And, it may be a thing for her where she doesn't really want to talk with it or talk about it publicly or deal with it. Mercury and Scorpio, I want to be private. I don't want to talk about it. But at the same time, if you talk badly about my family, I'm going to be very pissed off at you. So there could be that energy going on for her. And, this interesting thing with her father, do you guys remember how he wrote to one of her friends on social media? He told her to go take a bath and insulted her body count, implying that she was a loose, dirty, or unclean woman. Remember when I talked to you about those comments that her father made? That's very Mars and Virgo, okay? Virgo is, a sign where cleanliness and virtue and, body count and all of those things, women as being loose or slutty or all this kind of stuff. His insult, okay, to her friend. Now keep in mind that Mars rules her 11th house of friendships, and it is in her 4th house of family. Her father insulting her friend as being dirty or unclean or having a high body count, that is very chauvinistic. That is very ugly behavior, okay? And it's very Mars and Virgo to be her father insinuating women are unclean and are dirty women is very Mars and Virgo, okay? That's very, very Mars and Virgo. And with the square to Pluto, situations get very big and intense and blow up. Tempers flare. Violence in relationships, okay? Mars in my 4th house of family, square Pluto in my 7th house of relationships. Okay, her mom is a Virgo, which is interesting. Her mother has like 4 planets in Virgo, and her father is a Sagittarius. So I think this Mars-Pluto square is very interesting. And, situations can get very big and intense and blow up. And we can start to see the ugly side of partnership and relating to others in a very controlling way, where her father is like, I own her and she belongs to me, even though I'm the one cheating, okay? Now, I'm talking about her family, but this is Addison Rae's chart. So my question is how has her father having this very macho attitude and women are unclean and dirty and cheating and lying and all this kind of stuff, and him being angry and trying to show power over her mother, how has this impacted Addison's relationships? How has this impacted her own view of relationships? And I think we have to answer this question very carefully because of the Pluto in the 7th house, right? Because it is her 7th house of relationships. My father insulting women and calling them dirty and unclean and trying to overpower them and show this crazy machismo attitude, affects and colors my view of relationships and all the cheating as well. Okay. So this is where I bring up the T-square again in her chart between, and we see a T-square. It looks like a half of a square, really. It looks like a long opposition and then two squares there. So we have the T-square between Jupiter and Mars and Pluto. Okay, Jupiter rules her 10th house and her 7th house of relationships. So this tense T-square is going to affect both her career and her relationships. Now, when her father was doing all that stuff online, I bet it was seriously embarrassing her, okay? And perhaps it did affect her career as well when he was doing all that. But I think it affected her view on relationships, actually. Let's look at specifically how a pattern of cheating and lying and distrust could be affecting her relationships and how those patterns can be learned from our parents, and modeling of bad relationship patterns from emotionally immature parents can affect our ability to have relationships in the future. Now, the other thing that I picked up on in this chart too, with the Mars and Virgo in the 4th house of family and being the only Earth in her chart, is if I was her astrologer, I would be curious to know if anyone in her family struggles with IBS, if anyone had colon cancer, bowel issues, inflamed digestion, or stomach cancer in her family, okay? Especially with the Mars and Virgo squaring the Chiron, okay? I would definitely be asking her, like on her mom's side or her dad's side of the family, was there anybody that died or struggled with those issues, okay? Not to say that the same thing is going to happen to Addison Rae someday, but just that there is there's a predisposition to that issue. So I would definitely be talking about that from a medical astrology perspective as well. Now, I would say that her father and mother are very lucky because Addison Rae has this beautiful Moon-Neptune conjunction. So I do think she has the ability to forgive people for the things that they've done and not hold it against them. Okay, but maybe that's not always a good thing either, because it's like we want to believe the best in people, but people are showing up in ways that are very controlling, angry, ugly, messy, okay? And that can be challenging. So I want to talk about her relationships a little bit, because that Jupiter inside of that T-square is also ruling her 7th house of relationships. So her relationships are going to get pulled into this T-square, okay? And I want to talk a little bit about her relationship with Bryce Hall. Now, Bryce Hall is the first public relationship that she had as a famous TikToker. Now, he was also a famous TikToker as well, and part of like the Gen Z, Rat Pack, if you would call it, or Brat Pack, or however you would call them, like they had in the 80s, right? He was also a part of that group as well. Now, her and Bryce Hall were on and off dating again. They dated during 2020 and I think some of 2021 as well. Bryce Hall, now remember how I mentioned earlier that Addison Rae's father was a boxer and that he threatened Young Gravy to a boxing match? Do you guys remember how I said that? Now, interestingly, Bryce Hall is a boxer and a fighter, and Bryce Hall got into boxing just like her father, okay? And Bryce Hall does bare knuckle fighting as a boxer, and he is known for aggressive encounters and street fighting. Okay. Bryce Hall is a Leo with Mars in Scorpio. Okay. A very intense Mars. And he has a Mars Chiron conjunction in Scorpio. A very intense guy who likes to fight. Okay. And Bryce Hall went with all of his friends to a Mexican restaurant in LA, and he was vaping in the restaurant, and the Mexican restaurant owner asked him to leave. Hey, stop vaping in here or leave. And when him and his friends wouldn't leave, he ended up punching and beating the Mexican restaurant owner who asked him to leave after he wouldn't quit vaping. And he called the owner of the restaurant a bunch of racial slurs, okay? And this is where, again, like, this is her ex-boyfriend that did this, okay? And I talked about Pluto in Sagittarius and, you know, opposing the Jupiter in Gemini, which Jupiter rules the 7th house of relationships, okay? So my boyfriend is really into me, okay? My boyfriend is in my 1st house. He's really into me and he's really obsessed with me, but he's also violent and culturally insensitive. And he likes to box and fight like my father does, okay? And he has anger issues like my father does. And he is also culturally insensitive towards others as well. Like, you know, Bryce Hall having an issue with the Mexican restaurant owner and calling him a bunch of racial slurs. Now, Bryce Hall is also MAGA, okay? And he is a Trump supporter. And he is like the Gen Z mega bro leader, kind of, okay? So, you know, my ex-boyfriend is this super intense guy who likes to bare knuckle fight people. And Bryce Hall also went and fought another social media star online and got his butt kicked in front of millions of people, but he still kept fighting. Okay. So, you know, he has a Mars Chiron and Scorpio conjunction. I keep fighting and fighting, even though I'm hurting myself. Okay. Has to hurt himself to kind of prove a point that he's tough and not just this, you know, TikTok guy. Now, it's interesting because he, like Addison's father, is also boxing and violent. And Addison Rae talked about how she believed that he cheated on her. Even though he denies it, she said that she's pretty sure that he was cheating on her. So, you know, I talked about the pattern, right? The angry father who's trying to box people, who's obsessive and controlling, who likes to beat people up, who's culturally insensitive, you know, all these different things. It's really interesting to me, too, because Addison Rae's father is actually Mexican, I believe. His name is Monty Lopez. And yet Bryce Hall beat up this Mexican guy who's the owner of this restaurant and was calling him a bunch of racial slurs, okay? So this is where astrology is starting to get really intense, right? And really messy. Because when we have planets in the 4th house and, you know, the ruler of the 4th house is also, you know, in an intense sign like Scorpio, and we've got Mars there, and it's aspecting a planet in our 7th house. This can be where there is a pattern, right, of falling for really, really culturally, really intense guys who may have a habit of being culturally insensitive, okay? Now, Addison Rae is now in another relationship with a different guy who is Israeli. Now, he's Israeli, and he comes right now, we're in the middle of the Israeli-Palestine conflict, okay? And her boyfriend is Israeli. And so, you know, Addison Rae definitely going for people that, maybe not going for people intentionally, but having people show up in her life with very culturally intense views or having an ex-boyfriend who's very violent like her father. Now, we've all been, I think all of us have a habit of going for things in an unhealthy way that is like our family, okay? But I think for her, it's quite an intense pattern. And what we see with Mars, Pluto, and Jupiter is extreme chauvinism, aggressive or fanatical patriotism, enthusiastic devotion to a cause, a smug belief in the superiority of one's race, party, or sex, okay? And that, I feel like, is coming through very strongly with her ex, Bryce Hall. Now, this is her ex-boyfriend who she dated years ago, so it's not like she can't break the pattern. It's not like she can't be with another type of person. But what she said about him is, I think he cheated on me. He says he didn't, okay? But she believes he did. When the relationship ended, Ray didn't talk much about it. Hall, again, with her Mercury and Scorpio in the 6th house, far away from her ascendant, okay? She did not talk about the relationship when it ended, but he did, and he repeatedly denied the cheating accusations. And she said that was a shit show. He was very vocal about everything, and it was a mess. Yeah, because it's activating that T-square, okay? She's less angry now. I believe there's good in everyone, so I like to think there's a good part of it. Hall has since become a celebrity boxer and one of the leading Gen Z mega bros. We were really young. Ray doesn't like to dwell on memories. She's not big on sadness, especially when it comes to her work. She struggles to write sad music, okay? And I think that is very Moon Neptune, okay? Her Moon Neptune conjunction is saying, I want to believe that people are basically good and they can change for the better, okay? She's got a Moon Neptune conjunction in her 9th house. She idealizes that people can be friends, right? This is a person who could very much be friends with her ex, and very much with Uranus in the 9th house, wants to believe that people can change and wants to believe that people are basically good, okay? And she actually said that in the interview, okay? I believe there's good in everyone. So I like to think that there's a good part of him, all right? So we've got this Moon-Neptune conjunction in Aquarius. She's sensitive. She forgives easily. She wants to believe people are basically good. She can forgive and forget, especially when it comes to family-related matters. She can put aside the things that people do and detach with love. And she may feel like forgiveness is freedom, right? Moon in Aquarius conjunction Neptune. Forgiveness is freedom. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can detach and put aside what somebody did and forgive them. Now, that may be not a great thing in times when she needs to have a strong boundary, okay? If you need to have a strong boundary, believing in the good of everything and forgiving everything may not be the best thing when you're dealing with abusers, okay? But I think she's going to be okay because she has the trine to Saturn, which essentially helps her lay the boundary and create the separation, but still have compassion from afar, okay? And she may become really good at doing that in her life, which can be a sign of emotional maturity. I love you and I forgive you, but I don't want to be around you. And I am creating separation and distance, but I still respect you as a human being. That is actually very emotional. I'm not going to let you back into my life, but I can love you from a distance. That is actually very mature, okay? And I think in that regard, she may be a lot more emotionally mature than her own parents, okay? Or maybe even more mature than a lot of the people that she dates, right? I can essentially forgive you for not being like this perfect person. I can forgive a lot, okay? I can forgive and forget a lot, but if you do it too much, I will distance. distant myself, okay? And the Uranus in the ninth house, people can change. And I have hope that I can change too, or that I can change the world in a meaningful way. And with the moon Neptune trine Saturn, she's saying, with my family, we love each other unconditionally. But as I get older, I need to be separate from my family to develop my own ego, ideas, and lifestyle without them. The moon Saturn trine does talk about emotional maturity and developing that over time. Okay. So I think she has the ability to look past the faults of her family and forgive them, and to be emotionally mature and separate. And, having her freedom is important as an Aquarius moon. And I feel that her mom may be a bit emotionally reliant on Addison, or overly attached to each other, or that her mother is overly attached to her. But closeness can feel very suffocating, and emotional boundaries are necessary. She may be sensitive to hurting her mom's feelings when she needs to take space for herself. And she may struggle at first to give voice to that. But I think over time, she will be able to emotionally mature and say things that with the right timing, while still respecting other people's emotions, which is indeed a big accomplishment in life, to be able to do that, especially when you have grown up with parents that haven't modeled that and are not that great of communicators and do a lot of things without thinking. Okay, I think it is a real achievement to be able to do that in life. Okay, so I am giving her props there, and I think as she gets older, that's going to get even better for her. Now, I'd like to talk about her Venus in Scorpio. And Venus in Scorpio can be hit or miss, okay? Because Venus is in detriment in Scorpio. And it's funny because somebody asked me to do her chart because she kind of reminded them of Doja Cat. And Doja Cat has Venus in Scorpio. And Demi Moore also has Venus in Scorpio. And I brought her up in this reading as well. And Venus and Scorpio people can sometimes get attacked for what they're wearing. Like that it looks bad, or it's trashy, or that it's too revealing, or it's too naughty. Okay. And it's funny for Addison Rae, because Mercury is the ruler of her ascendant, and that Mercury is actually in a conjunction with the Venus in Scorpio. And in her chart, although Venus is in detriment, Venus is actually the insect benefic and is going to give her good results, but the results may be mixed a little bit too, because Venus is in detriment, okay? And with Venus in Scorpio, you can see a picture here of her from Vogue, where she's wearing all lace and then just like underwear or a bikini bottom, which is very Venus in Scorpio, like very risque. And, with Venus in Scorpio, she may like to keep things secret. She may not like to talk about her relationships too much. And she tries to keep her relationships private because she values privacy, okay? And she may be a lot less gossipy than we would think that a Gemini rising would normally be. With Mercury in Scorpio, she actually does value privacy. And I believe she also prides herself in being a girl's girl too, which is the ruler of her ascendant conjunction Venus. I'm a girl's girl, okay? And it's interesting because Drake, the musician Drake, also has Venus Mercury conjunction in Scorpio, and he sings a lot about relationships and the issues he's encountered. And Addison Rae sings a lot about relationships as well, and her very first song was called Obsessed, which is very Scorpio. And I'd like to point out that Doja Cat was talking about lingerie with Venus and Scorpio and talking about randomly walking around the house wearing lingerie for herself and not for any guy, which I think is very Venus and Scorpio. And I wanted to remind you guys of Demi Moore, who has Venus and Scorpio, who did a naked pregnancy shoot back in the day on the cover of a magazine. And people like were enraged. I mean, some people were happy about it, but a lot of people were just enraged. How dare you? You're pregnant. You shouldn't be exposing yourself that way, right? Which is very Venus and Scorpio, challenging what the beauty standard is or challenging what we think is beautiful, right? Which, you know, she's very natural. She's a pregnant woman on the front of a magazine, basically naked, and people are like, oh my God, you know, but she's like, here I am, very Venus and Scorpio. And Demi Moore also would wear things on the red carpet that were very ugly. Like she one time wore a lace bustier with biker shorts to the Oscars, like biker shorts that she made. And then it had like this very weird cape behind it. Okay. So Addison Rae has the same Venus basically as Demi Moore. Like it is in detriment, Venus and Scorpio. And so I think I'm going to show you guys some fashion choices of Addison Rae that are a little bit hit or miss. Okay. But Venus and Scorpio likes to take a risk with fashion and doesn't like to be like everyone else. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about the ruler of her ascendant conjunction Venus and Scorpio. And because the ruler of her ascendant is conjunction Venus, she talks about, I think my entire life, I've kind of always looked up to love. I'm a hopeless romantic, if you will. But I do know that maybe now's my time to be hopelessly in love with myself. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do. She added, I do love a good relationship, and I think they're always inspiring and fun. And then she put that the Libra, so she knows something about astrology too, because she wrote, the Libra in me is hopelessly romantic. When I ask if she's still dating Omer Fetty, who's her current boyfriend, she confirms in a shy, quiet voice, Mercury in Scorpio, right? She confirms in a shy, quiet voice that their 3-year romance hasn't been totally private, but she said it's one topic that is off limits. I'm very guarded when it comes to relationships because my first public relationship taught me a lot about myself, okay? So she is private and guarded about her relationships. Mercury in Scorpio, conjunction Venus in Scorpio. I don't want to talk about it. It's off limits. I'm not going to talk about it, okay? But she has been with her current boyfriend for 3 years, and evidently they're still growing strong. And here is a hit or miss outfit. When I talk about Venus and Scorpio, here's an outfit that she wore to the VMAs. Now, this girl has got balls, because I'll tell you what, I would not be wearing, for me, for my body, and I'm not saying because of her body type, I'm just saying, I genuinely don't have the guts to wear something like this in public. I'm also in my 40s, so I'm not going to, but I mean, good for her for wearing whatever she wants. But she wore this to the VMAs, which is like, you know, this bra with panties and then peep toe heel shoes, okay? And then it has like this white tutu behind her. And she was trying to channel Madonna here in her Like a Virgin era wearing white. Now, the thing is Madonna has Venus in Leo and she has Venus in Scorpio. And if I was her astrologer slash fashion stylist, I would tell her not the white, okay? Venus and Scorpio, go for the black, okay? Go for the darker colors, go for the deep, dark, and dangerous. not so much with the white, okay? And this is where, like, astrology can genuinely help us to look and feel our best, okay? But she's going for a very campy, glam type of look. But people made comments like they did with Demi Moore, who has Venus in Scorpio, like, this is a weird outfit. The top, this bra doesn't fit. They were calling it a diaper dress. They were saying that it was an ill-fitting top and that there was a weird bulge in the bottoms, and they called it a diaper dress, and they called the peep toe heels office classic instead of red carpet. And someone made a comment like her stylist should be fired, but Addison Rae fired back and said, if you don't like my outfit, unfollow B, okay? Like, unfollow, bitch, basically. It's like, oh, wow. And that's Venus in Scorpio for it. I'm wearing whatever the hell I want. If you don't like it, unfollow me. I don't care, okay? But really taking a risk here with this outfit. And I would say this tutu for a Venus in Scorpio white tutu, I would just do you can do things in astrology by just doing a different color, right? She has Venus in Scorpio. To me, this is more of a Venus in Scorpio type of a look, right? That we have here. Anyway, astrology and fashion is a thing, okay? And here's her looking very Venus in Scorpio. And this is with her and her current boyfriend, Omar Fetty. And the photos I found online of her with her boyfriends, all her online photos with her and her boyfriends have this very deep, dark, and dangerous feel to it, which is very Venus in Scorpio energy. And what's interesting about Omar Fetty is that, like, there's an interview with Addison Rae where the interviewers are like, "Oh, what are you wearing?" And she wasn't wearing this right here, which is basically like a see-through nightgown, So that's very Venus in Scorpio too, even though it's got some of that Libra glam to it. It's still very Venus in Scorpio. But there's an interview where she's all dressed up on the red carpet and the ladies are interviewing her and they're like, "Hey, what are you wearing tonight?" And she's telling them, and she's all dressed up and all glammed out. And they're like, and she's like, "Oh, my boyfriend is here." And they're like, "Oh, bring him over." And so she brings him over and he's wearing like a hoodie and jeans, and his hair's looking interesting. And I think the interviewers were like, what the I think they were kind of taken aback by by Omar's, what he was wearing on the red carpet. Like, they were kind of like, huh? Because you have this cheerleader glam girl who's dressed up very nice. And then you've got the guy in the hoodie and the jeans. And it's like, huh? And I think they were just really taken aback by him. And what is funny to me is that she has Venus in Scorpio squaring the Uranus in Aquarius. And to me, that's kind of like showing up with your boyfriend and you don't look like, you look different or you look odd together. Like, you could be going to a party all dressed up, but your boyfriend is just wearing a hoodie and jeans. And it's like, okay, what's going on here, right? Which, I don't know. To me, as a Libra rising, that would drive me absolutely crazy. But for a Venus in Scorpio, maybe she's like, who cares? Fuck it. Like, we're here together. We're having a good time. We're wearing whatever the hell we want. F what you think about me, okay? And so I think that's really interesting. And she talks about being the girl next door, like a good girl next door, but that she's also has a very wild and crazy side too. And I think that is where the Venus in Scorpio squaring Uranus is coming into play, is that very wild side that she has about herself there too. Okay. And so anyway, I just wanted to point out that Venus in Scorpio. Now, some of you may be saying, if you know a little bit about astrology, you may be saying, well, Okay, so she wears weird clothes sometimes, and her boyfriend doesn't match what she's wearing sometimes, and she likes to wear risque, dangerous things or barely any clothes at all. Very Venus and Scorpio, right? She likes to make some people a little bit, with her choices of what she's wearing. Okay, that's all right and well, but Venus is actually in her planet or in her chart, she has a night chart. And so Venus is actually the most benefic planet in her chart, but it's in the sixth house, which is a very stressful place to have a planet. Okay. And so you may be asking, well, how does that manifest, right? It's the best planet, but it's in a difficult house, okay? And I thought that this was a really interesting point. So Addison Rae was going to go back to Louisiana and film a TV show called Addison Rae Goes Home. However, an act of fate occurred by way of an invasion of her privacy, okay? And of course, Scorpio is very concerned about privacy. So she had an invasion of privacy, and a rough version of the songs that she had created were leaked online, okay? And she said, I felt so terrible. She still doesn't know how the songs were stolen and leaked online, and that she was really hurt by the fact of them being stolen. So we have Venus with Mercury, the thief, right? In the sixth house of stress, right? My music got stolen and it got released randomly, and before it was even really ready, and I felt so bad about it. But something strange happened. The rough demos that got released went to go viral. And it wasn't just a TikTok viral thing. Like, everyone was liking her new music and people were begging her to release them. Okay, and this was her song Diet Pepsi, Aquamarine, and those couple of songs. They were leaked online, and her first song that came out wasn't that successful. And I'm sure she was very nervous about those getting leaked, okay? So again, it's like something bad happened. Her music got stolen and it got leaked online, but Venus is the insect benefic. People loved it, and something strange happened and everything started to go viral for her. And because it's in Scorpio, I feel like, people could be a little suspicious, right? Like, did you leak it yourself? Did you, quote unquote, accidentally leak it yourself? Because then if people didn't like it, you could just say, well, they weren't done yet. And it's kind of a way to, to push away like people who are going to criticize you if you just go, well, somebody stole it and it wasn't ready yet, and that's why you don't like it, right? But if in actuality somebody did steal it and leaked it online and it really did happen that way, then it actually turned out to be a good thing. And that's where we see Venus really helping her out as the insect benefic. So I thought that was really like the story of the stolen music that went viral. Very, very interesting there. Now, we're getting near the end here, but this next slide I could have easily included with the Mars, Jupiter, Pluto stuff. When I told you guys earlier, if I was her astrologer, I would tell her, be very careful about the brands that you're collaborating with, because you've got a Jupiter, your career is opposite Pluto in the seventh house. Be very careful of the brands you choose to collaborate with. And here's a brand. She decided to do a cross collaboration with Adidas and this clothing company called Praying. And she posted it to her Instagram. It was a white bikini that said father and son on the two boobs. And then the lower part of the bikini said Holy Spirit on it. Okay. And when she posted the picture, she got a huge onslaught of backlash from Christian groups saying that she was acting disrespectful to religion, okay? And, sexual clothing ads that are overly religious that miss the mark with people. She ended up taking down the Instagram post. But again, Jupiter does have to do with faith and spirituality and religion, and it is opposite Pluto in her 7th house of Sagittarius. So again, culturally insensitive ads, music, photos, concepts that are offensive to religion. Yeah, I would definitely tell her, stay away from something like that, because you're going to get your chart tells you're going to get a lot of backlash over that, okay? We don't even have to question it. People will for sure notice and get on you over it, so just don't do it, that type of thing. So again, this is her picture from that ad campaign for this company called Praying, that people were really mad about, the the bikini, and the religious folks were up in arms about it, okay? So again, and that's also, to me, I put it in the Venus and Scorpio section because, again, this is quite, a risque fashion choice, right? Which sometimes with Venus and Scorpio, the mark is missed, and sometimes it pays off, right? So anyway, I want to move away from her Venus and Scorpio, and I want to talk a little bit about her North and South node, okay? Now, Addison Rae has the North node in Cancer and the South node in Capricorn, in her 2nd house of money and her 8th house of other people's resources. So that is her Rahu, North node in Cancer, K2 or South node in Capricorn. All right. And I found some interesting articles now where Addison Rae is talking about her family, because when she got famous, her mom made a TikTok and got over 12 million followers. Her dad made one and got over 5 million followers. So, when she got famous, her whole family got swept up in it and kind of got famous too. And then when they were all fighting online, because her dad was doing all that stuff, it really created a lot of issues. And Addison Rae made these comments, and they really talk about guilt and survival. Now, I'm going to read you guys some of these comments. Now, when we look at Cancer and Capricorn in the chart, we can really, of course, Cancer could be guilt and survival could be Capricorn. So issues, financial issues, debt, karma, responsibility, heavy responsibility, financial responsibilities. I feel a lot of guilt, okay? Guilt and survival are very Cancer Capricorn concepts, okay? So I'd like you guys to keep that in mind while we look at some article from the Rolling Stone interview that she gave, okay? So she's talking about when in 2002, her mom and dad's marriage was publicly crumbling, with tabloids and TikTok investigators piecing together clues from her mom and dad's post, trying to find salacious stories, often involving other low-level influencers, and then her parents ended up getting a second divorce that November. At the time, Rae was silent, okay? Mercury in Scorpio. At the time, Rae was silent about the drama, aside from unfollowing both of her mom and dad on social media. Eventually, her parents reached a better place, but the situation left a fracture. I feel a lot of guilt for what my family experienced and responsibility, she says, about having them pulled into the fold of her fame. I think it's unfortunate. I just think it's unfortunate that it was exposed like it was. Addison revealed that her parents actually got divorced when she was younger, and were on and off for most of her childhood. Because of that, her family moved around a lot from Louisiana to Texas and back. At one point, their family had even lived out of a camper that had one main room and a bunk bed. And she wrote, she said in the interview, "Everybody just wants to survive. I can't blame them for that. I can only take responsibility for the things that I choose." Okay, so these themes of guilt and responsibility as it relates to her parents and her family are quite interesting with regard to her North and South node. Now, she has the North node in Cancer in the second house. Her family, now the North node is where we can see a lot of acquisition. We can see a lot of acquiring of things. We can see a lot of, relentless pursuit of something we want really, really bad in this lifetime, or something we really want to experience that we didn't get to experience in the past. And we can see this need to want a better outcome for something, okay, with the North node. Now, it's in the second house, and because of her fame, her family has made a lot more money and has been able to, like before, they were, at one point when they were living in a camper, it was her dad's boss let them live in that camper because they had nowhere else to go. So it sounds like her family was literally, maybe when she was younger, on the line of almost homelessness, right? But, that fame that she achieved, all her family benefited, okay? North node in Cancer, all of her family benefited financially as a result of her fame. But at the same time, with the South node in Capricorn, there is this sense of almost having lost it all in the past, or barely being able to survive, or not wanting to think about how close the family got maybe to even being homeless, right? And it's those issues of guilt and survival. Now, in Addison's chart, the sun in Libra is at the bending of the nodes. When we have a planet that is squaring the North and South node, we say that that planet is at the bendings, okay? And her sun in Libra, because the sun does have to do with fame and getting noticed, and so it's like my fame and the attention that I get really affects my family. It actually allows us to have more money and to support ourselves financially. Like, my fame allows that, but it also created a deep fracture, South node in Capricorn, and created, a lot of attention and embarrassment, maybe on areas that she wouldn't have wanted exposed, and when I talk about the South node in Capricorn, right? The South node in Capricorn, so Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and we can see she has that Saturn rising. And with Addison Rae, there may be a tendency to blame herself for the issues and problems in the past, or a tendency to be very hard on herself and experience a lot of self-doubt. Now, with her sun in Libra squaring her nodes, there's a need to work through that doubt and blame and survival and use her social skills, Libra, confidence and popularity, sun in Libra, to move beyond limitations and depressing financial circumstances. Okay? She needs to understand her relationship to herself instead of always having to entertain others to be liked or noticed or seen. And there can be a thing with Libra is, if other people like me and find me non-threatening and that I'm a nice girl, I will do well in life, and so will my family. Okay? But there's also that South node in Capricorn and the North node. I feel guilty about my fame and my attention that it has brought upon my family. And that is a lot of responsibility to carry on her shoulders, okay? And it's funny because Addison Rae really like idealizes Britney Spears and Madonna and all these artists from the early 2000s. And it's funny because Britney Spears also has Saturn rising in her chart, and she grew up in Louisiana in a very poor family where they were actually eating squirrel for dinner. And Britney Spears also had the South Node in Capricorn. Okay. So, and Britney Spears had all this, like, her family did support her dancing and singing and all of that, but Britney is the reason that her family is out of poverty. And actually, Addison Rae is the reason her family is out of poverty too. Now, did her family move with her and help her and support her and encourage her along the way? Yes, we see the moon is trining the Saturn. Okay, so that talks about the longevity and the ability to survive together as a family and the ability to support each other long term as a family. Okay, but she did feel very guilty, and she's like, my parents are just trying to survive and I feel really bad. And so I think that's interesting. Now, her North Node is in a trine with her Venus, which says that her beauty, her artistry actually does help her become famous. Okay. Her beauty, her artistry, that all, it doesn't hurt. Right. And a lot of people just say, well, she's famous because she's pretty and popular. All right. But there is something deeper there with the Venus in Scorpio. There is like a way of magnetically drawing situations to you. And it's not just a pretty face, but there is something deeper and mysterious there that is helping her to push her North Node destiny further. And, truly wanting to make money and help support her family through being an artist could definitely be a goal that her soul wanted to achieve, even though it has felt very hard for her. Okay, I also see that South Node in Capricorn is in a difficult relationship to her ascendant. It's called a quincunx. And I think at times when she was younger, things probably got a lot worse and were a lot more bad than maybe she even knew. Maybe she didn't even really know to the full extent how bad economically it really was for her family. Maybe some of that was hidden for her. But the South Node in Capricorn is really like, that in the 8th house is we have to work to survive. Okay. And, maybe, like I said, some of that was hidden from her. Because from what I was reading, like I said, it sounded like they were almost on the edge of homelessness, which is actually, very, very serious. So to be able to provide a better future for her family, but there is consequences to that as well, which she does recognize. And that moon trine Saturn is talking about how she is handling that karmic responsibility. And I think she's actually handling it really well. And I think she is, quite emotionally mature. When her parents were fighting, all she did is unfollow them online. It's not like she added fuel to the fire or started yelling back at them or taking the fight more public. I think she's actually quite emotionally mature in her own way. And, but it's a lot of responsibility to carry on her shoulders. And with, the South Node in Capricorn, in a difficult relationship to her ascendant, I feel like she wants to forget about the past and let it go and not linger on the sadness, and would rather not know about the struggles of the past and would rather just move towards a more positive vision of the future, is what I feel about her. And she may have a hard time talking about the past, and it may really stress her out. And that's maybe why she doesn't necessarily want to talk about certain things either. Okay. So it's a very interesting energy that she has there with her North and South Node. And I can see why she resonates with Britney Spears, or she likes certain things about her or resonates towards her, because she actually has things in her chart that are very similar to Britney Spears. And I actually did a whole reading of Britney's chart, which you guys can find on this channel if you're interested in that. But this is the very last thing that I want to point out about her chart. Now, it's amazing how Addison Rae, much respect to her. I know a lot of people have their opinions about her, whatever, but I think it's pretty cool that she was able to, go off of TikTok or distance herself from TikTok and actually put out some good music or good art that reflects more of who she is. And I want to talk about playing into our strengths in our chart, okay? Because we all have, and I think a lot of times planets that are in the ninth house or the fifth house, okay, these are two really positive houses that have trine relationships to our ascendant. If we have planets there, we should play to those planets, okay? We shouldn't try to be something that we aren't or copy other people, okay? I think when she tries to copy Madonna or, like this thing, I mean, bless her soul for having the balls to wear something like that, because I could never do it. But I think what, she wants to be kind of like Madonna or do stuff like Madonna. There's a way to be inspired by somebody but not copy them, if you know what I mean. And I think she's starting to figure that out as a creative person. But here's what I'm going to say. Play to your strengths in your astrology chart, because people will respond to it. Don't try to be something you aren't, because it's not going to be good. It's not going to resonate. Now, here she is doing, I think this is a photo shoot for her To Die For album. Now, making an album called To Die For is very Venus and Scorpio, first of all, okay? So you're playing to your strength. Good job, okay? And then you have this very, red in the background, strong eye contact, seductive. You've got the bubble gum there, which is kind of more of the Libra part, okay? But you've got those scorpionic vision going on there. And to me, this picture is really playing up like the innocent but also naughty. And I feel like that is a good place for her to play, because it actually is supporting her chart. Now, the more that as a musician, the more that she reaches into her ninth house to pull, for instance, the Moon Neptune conjunction and the Uranus there, the more that she draws on that ethereal, breathy, visionary, otherworldly, romantic, deep, dark, and dangerous Venus and Scorpio, but ethereal yet vulnerable, okay? Electric mermaid, Moon Neptune in Aquarius, okay? Flowing tunes that are soft and vulnerable and yet passionate, okay? If she goes towards that kind of music and that type of genre, it's going to highlight the strengths in her chart. I think her Moon Neptune in the ninth is a very beautiful thing and highlights a very beautiful, ethereal, breathy, visionary, eclectic kind of side of her that she should highlight, okay? And I feel like that song Diet Pepsi is leaning in that direction. Plus, it's a song about a liquid, Moon Neptune. Diet Pepsi, Moon Neptune. And it is a brand, which actually, is a strong thing from her. Like a Diet Pepsi is an actual brand of a product, which also feeds into her sun Jupiter trine, okay, like I talked about earlier. But it's funny because Diet Pepsi is actually a liquid that you drink, and Moon Neptune is all liquid, but it is very misty and mysterious and ethereal and electric sounding. And soft and vulnerable, yet passionate, yet otherworldly. If she can connect to that, if she can keep connecting to her moon Neptune energy and keep working on that, right? It's connected to her Saturn. So it's like, just keep working at it, keep plugging away at it, keep doing it, keep staying open to it. Then I feel like she can do really well musically. Also, when she throws in the Venus in Scorpio and there's something daring or passionate or, deep, dark, and dangerous about it too, layering that in there just adds to the mystery and the intrigue, right? Which that is, to me, what she should definitely be playing to. And somebody called her new music a critic said it was a hypnotic mild tempo lullaby about young lust. They wrote that about Diet Pepsi, about that song Diet Pepsi. They said it is a hypnotic mid-tempo lullaby about young lust. Hypnotic mid-tempo lullaby is Moon Neptune, okay? And young lust is Venus in Scorpio. So she's really channeling that energy into that song, and it blew up. It was really, really successful. And I think we can, that Moon Neptune conjunction is ethereal and just out of reach, but also dreamy. It's vulnerable and yet seductive, okay? And this is where, like I said, we play to our strengths instead of trying to be someone that we aren't, okay? She has the Sun trine Uranus. She can reinvent herself successfully. She can move away from copying and into being. And I believe, like Madonna, she can continually reinvent herself without literally copying what Madonna did, because that comes off as tacky, right? We want to be inventive and original, and we can take the concept of reinvention but do it in our own way. And so those are, Lisa. Oh, hi, Lisa. Oh my gosh, you're here. I just saw your, big transits for her now. Yep. And actually with Jupiter and Gemini in 2024, I believe that was when Jupiter was here in Gemini. Well, Jupiter's still in Gemini, but like in 2024, I believe Diet Pepsi really started doing really, really well during the whole Jupiter and Gemini of this last year. So that is actually very interesting. I also think during the toughest times for her were in 2021 and 2022. And that's when Saturn was literally crossing all of her moon, all of her Aquarius planets. And she was going through really tough times in 2022. That's when her parents got divorced and everything fell apart. In 2021, I think she was going through the breakup with Bryce Hall. Lots of tough energy when she had Saturn going through her ninth in Aquarius a few years back. And I forgot to mention that when she... when I was talking about her nodes, I forgot to mention her north and south node, that she became TikTok famous and started to go viral on TikTok in July of 2019. She was having a nodal return at that time, and there was a solar eclipse right around that time in Cancer. And she was having a nodal return. There was a solar eclipse in Cancer, and her nodes were being hit at the time that she went viral in 2019 on TikTok. And interestingly, I am curious about what's going to happen to her chart in the year 2028 when we have a reverse of the nodes coming. We'll have the South Node in Cancer and the North Node in Capricorn, but she's going to be having eclipses again on her nodes in the year 2028. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen then, because she got incredibly famous on her nodal return on TikTok when there was the solar eclipse in Cancer. That was around the time that she really broke through on TikTok. So I'm curious. Yeah. Hi, Lisa. Yeah. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for listening and thank you for being here. I didn't even know if people were hearing me. I'm like, is anyone hear me? And I know it's late at night and it's a weird time to go live on a Sunday evening, but yeah. So, and actually, to your point on the transits, I really wanted to, and of course, she has Saturn going through her 10th house right now, and she has Neptune there too. She's got a lot going on, but, and anyway, so, and at the time when she got really famous, Jupiter was in Sagittarius opposing her natal Jupiter as well. So she had a Jupiter opposition going on in 2019 when she was like really getting famous. And I think her music really started to, really, really kind of go somewhere during the whole Jupiter and Gemini. I feel like her music really started to be more recognized and things like that. But actually, I was looking at her zodiacal releasing, and I was looking at her annual perfections, and I was looking at her solar returns and stuff. And I wanted to add a bunch of that to the presentation, but I just knew I was going to run out of time. And I just knew it would turn into like a 10-hour presentation if I went there with all that. But I hope that you guys enjoyed my presentation of Addison Rae's chart. I have to say, her chart really does fit her. And there's just so many interesting things I learned doing her chart about her. And, I wish her all the best in the future and good luck with her career. Thank you all for watching. I hope everybody has a beautiful evening and enjoy. And also, too, if you guys want to book a natal chart reading with me, you can certainly do so. And I have had quite a few Gen Z people who are around Addison's age, born around that 2000 timeframe, that have booked readings with me. And it's been a really interesting session. So if you feel like you want to take the plunge, details will be in the description box of how to book a reading after this if you're interested. But with that, I hope everybody has an amazing evening and take care.